All right, today we're going to dive into something, well, it's a pretty mind-bending idea. It's a framework for the future called the Aesthetic Engineering Code, and it tries to answer one of the biggest questions of our time.
I mean, really think about that for a second. We're building these incredible machines that are just getting better and better, exponentially better at logic, at math, at pure raw efficiency. So as they start to own those domains, what's left for us, Where do we fit in? What's our irreplaceable, uniquely human value? That's the anxiety, right? That's the question a lot of us are wrestling with.
But what if that anxiety is actually a compass, pointing us exactly where we need to go? That exact question is the jumping-off point for the whole framework we're exploring. The idea isn't to compete with machines on their turf, no way. It's about completely redefining what we consider valuable in the first place.
Okay, so first things first, we have to really pin down this new, or maybe it's just a newly appreciated form of human value.
This really lays it all out, doesn't it? On one side, you've got the machine's playground, logic, pure computation, optimizing everything down to the last decimal point. And on the other side, that's our territory. It's the stuff that's profoundly human, our ability to feel, our eye for form and beauty, our deep, fundamental need for connection. And this is the core idea of this whole thing. Just let that one sink in. Logic is cheap, resonance is expensive. In a future where an AI can spit out a logical answer in a nanosecond, that's not the rare thing anymore. The truly scarce, the expensive commodity becomes resonance. That deep feeling that something is right, that sense of harmony, that a solution doesn't just work on paper, but it feels true.
So, with that major principle established, we can finally introduce the framework that's built on top of it, the Aesthetic Engineering Code.
So this is it, the Aesthetic Engineering Code, or AEC for short. And it's really a whole new way of looking at problems. It's an approach that says when we're trying to solve the big stuff, harmony and human resonance come first. It's not some nice-to-have feature you tack on at the end. No, it's the #1 goal, even over raw cold efficiency. Now, to work inside this framework, you need a very particular skill. It's called high-fidelity sensing. And listen, this is not just about having good taste or liking nice art. This is a disciplined, it's a trained ability to look at a super complex system, like an economy or a piece of software, and to perceive its harmony or its lack of harmony, using your aesthetic sense as a kind of advanced data processing tool.
So how in the world do you develop a skill like that? Well, it's not magic. The idea is we all start at step 1. We all have this natural, built-in ability to appreciate aesthetics, right? A beautiful piece of music, an incredible landscape. The AEC says you take that raw ability and you train it, you sharpen it, you turn it into high-fidelity sensing. And that leads to the final, massive mental leap. You learn to trust that feeling of beauty as a genuine, reliable signal for whether a solution is actually valid and sound.
And this is where things get really practical, and maybe a little radical. We start treating our sense of beauty not as some fuzzy preference, but as a critical piece of data. This leads to a pretty powerful insight. When a complex system feels ugly, clunky, out of sync, just disjointed, that's not just your opinion. According to this framework, that's a warning light on your dashboard. That feeling of ugliness is actually an indicator of a deep underlying fragility. It's a sign that the whole thing is probably going to break when you put it under any real stress.
And we are not talking about small problems here. This way of thinking is meant for the biggest challenges you can imagine. How do you design a society that's both just and resilient? How would you even begin the massive task of terraforming an entire planet? Or, closer to home, how do we build technology that actually serves us instead of the other way around? The AEC argues that for all of these, the most beautiful, harmonious solution is also going to be the strongest one.
And this really lays out the stakes. You can have an ugly system that, sure, it checks all the technical boxes, it works on paper, but in the real world, it creates friction, it makes people feel alienated, and ultimately, it fails the very humans it was supposed to serve. But the harmonious system, the one guided by aesthetics, it's not only resilient and technically solid, but it succeeds on a human level. It feels right because it is right.
So what's the point of all this? What's the grand purpose? Where does the Aesthetic Engineering Code actually lead us in the end?
It leads us right here. The ultimate goal, the whole reason for this, is to act as a safeguard. It is a tool to stop ourselves from engineering these futures that are technically brilliant, but are, in reality, just human dystopias. By making harmony the top priority, we build a defense against a future that works on paper, but completely fails in spirit.
Which leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought to chew on.
We started this whole conversation by separating human feeling from cold machine logic. But what if we've had it backwards this whole time? In a world that's getting more and more complex, could it be that our deeply human, highly evolved sense of beauty is actually the most sophisticated, the most reliable, and in the end, the most logical tool we have for building a future that's worth living